Alright, today we got serial killers that are still on the loose by Chilling Stairs. If you guys want to go check it out on your own, the video is in the link in my description of this video. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on post notifications. We at 135 subscribers right now, which is insane. Thank you guys so much. Also, we don't be live streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/mspro_live. Link is in my bio, and it'll also pop up on screen right here. But yeah, let's get into it.
Vending machine killer.
Vending machine killer.
On April 30th, 1985, a 45-year-old
I like this dude's voice.
stopped near a vending machine in Fukuyama, Japan.
Is this like?
He was exhausted from work and was looking for an energy drink to help him power through the rest of the day.
Is this in Japan?
When he approached the vending machine, however, he noticed something surprising.
What?
A bottle of Oranaminsi energy drink was already in the pickup tray. Thinking he'd left out a free drink, the truck driver wasted no time chugging it down.
Yo, that looks nasty.
What he didn't know was that this would be the last drink he would ever taste.
He died
Instead
from
of the refreshing feeling he was looking for, he felt something horribly wrong with his body. A bitter, burning sensation quickly spread throughout his throat, followed by an intense wave of nausea.
That ain't good.
It wasn't long before he was lying on the road in excruciating pain.
Paramedics pull up.
He was rushed to a nearby hospital where doctors discovered a lethal amount of paraquat dichloride in his system.
What the fuck is that?
Paraquat is an herbicide that was quite common in Japan at the time. More importantly, it's also highly toxic.
It causes acute respiratory distress syndrome,
toxic to humans. When ingested, it can lead to severe nausea, throat inflammation, internal chemical burn.
Dude, speaking of like medical stuff, dude, my wisdom teeth are coming, so I'm probably gonna have to get those out. That ain't fun. I ain't gonna lie.
Eventually death. This is also.
Yo, should I get recorded and posted to my wisdom teeth?
Why it's been banned completely from over 70 countries to date. Unfortunately, despite knowing the reason for his illness, there was nothing the doctors could do to save his life. There's no antidote for the deadly chemical today, let alone back then.
Wait, so did this dude die?
After hanging on to his life for a month, the truck driver passed away on the 30th of May, 1985.
Rip in the chat.
At first, investigators assumed that given the nature of his work, he might have accidentally encountered the toxic substance while on duty. However, after reviewing his call records, they found no trace of his herbicide or anything remotely linked to it. This left them with only one conclusion.
I don't know much about truck drivers.
The chemical was mixed into the drink he consumed just moments before collapsing in agony.
Who did it?
But with no leads or concrete evidence, they couldn't determine whether it was a murder or self-inflicted act, resulting in the case getting shelved for the time being. Now, while this might sound absurd today, you have to understand that paraquat was readily available in the country at the time.
Damn. Wait, when did this happen?
You didn't need any prescription or identification to purchase the chemical, leading to over 1,400 people using it as the poison of their choice in 1984. Oh my gosh. In other words, the possibility of it being poison of their choice in 1984 alone.
Oh, 1984.
In other words, the possibility of it being self-inflicted
was this in 1984?
However, just as the investigators were about to give up on this case completely, they received tragic news.
Oh gosh.
Another person had fallen victim to the same poison.
Is it the same energy drink?
Oranaminsi on the 5th of September. Then...
Yo, what's this serial killer's problem with poisoning the same energy drink?
Another 6 days later, and one more 2 weeks after that.
Is there no cameras? Like, CCTV, what is it? The... security camera.
By this point, it was clear that someone was deliberately poisoning vending machine drinks across Japan.
Well, probably not. This was in 1984, but I'm not sure.
Serial killer. Unfortunately, this supposed killer was also extremely thorough. He didn't leave any fingerprints or DNA evidence on the drinks he tampered with, and only targeted vending machines with no.
Wait, how would he open it and then like close it back up? Like, if I was dating something out of the vending machine that was free and I saw that it was already open, I'm not touching it.
CCTV cameras nearby. As for why his victims willingly drank...
Wait, what did how did he say it?
CCTV cameras.
As
for why his victims willingly drank the unknowingly poisoned drinks he left behind, that had to do with the buy one get one free promotion Oranaminsi was running around the time to entice younger consumers.
Buy one get one free.
However,
this is an energy drink, right? They're promoting it to younger people.
Some people only wanted the one drink. They often left the second free drink near the vending machine as a gift for the next person. This was common.
That's kind of sketchy.
Enough that people didn't find the laced drinks suspicious and drank them without a second thought. Sadly, this method was terribly effective.
Oh, gosh.
By the end of the year, this mysterious vending machine killer had claimed the lives of 12 victims and had severely injured 35 more.
Oh my gosh.
As I mentioned earlier, this killer was a master of hiding his tracks. He operated all...
Wait, so is this like a case of like you either like die from it or like you're just in the hospital for a long time if you get affected by it? Is it just like chance?
Across western and central Japan, as well as Tokyo, making it near impossible for investigators to pinpoint his location. The lack of evidence also made it difficult to figure out his motive. Some speculated that he was doing
Japan's not that big though. Like, sure, there's a lot of people, but like
to extort money.
Surely today they can narrow it down.
If
they had the footage, they definitely would.
Pharmaceutical, the company that made Oranaminsi. This is because in 1984, a group called the Mystery Men with 21 Faces threatened to poison food products unless the companies paid them money.
Oh, gosh.
So some believed that the vending machine killer was a copycat and wanted something similar.
Or was it them?
However, this theory didn't last very long because Otsuka Pharmaceutical didn't receive any demands or extortion letters from the perpetrator. Additionally, the killer also began using other drinks, like the drink Real Gold and
Dr. Pepper. Why did the cans look like that? What the hell? Dr. Pepper, it looks like a jar.
Hiroaki Iwao, a Tokyo professor of criminal sociology, proposed a more disturbing theory regarding the killer's motives.
What does he say?
It is not uncommon for Japanese who live under tremendous pressure, both on the job and in overcrowded communities, to let out their frustrations by hurting someone else. The person responsible may even wait around to see who buys the poisoned drink. He or she may find this as a kind of exhilarating release from the tension.
I got a theory. It's this dude saying all this. Why is he doing all this?
Of life in Japan.
What?
But even if this was the truth, it still didn't bring investigators any closer to catching the suspect. Left with no other options, the authorities turned to the public and launched a nationwide campaign on the 27th of September.
I need to stop
They
pausing
placed
so much.
signs and distributed leaflets telling people to avoid suspicious free drinks and to properly inspect the cap seals on their beverages before
that's what
consumption.
I would do.
They also instructed vending machine owners to investigate their stock for any anomalies and told chemical shops to monitor their customers more closely.
Damn.
It's unclear how effective this campaign was.
They just had to ruin it for everyone.
Victims kept increasing even after its launch. But then something unexpected happened.
What happened?
On the 17th of November, the murder spree stopped completely after the death of a 17-year-old girl. She was the only female to have died from the poisoning. It's possible that the person who committed these atrocities had a moral code against harming
that's so young.
Though that's nothing more than a baseless speculation. Due to the complete lack of evidence, the vending machine killer was never identified.
That's crazy.
Cementing this case as one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in Japanese history.
They could be on the loose today, but like, this is what, 1980s? Depending on the age, he could be dead. I don't know, but kind of got clickbaited there. What do y'all think?
Little Rock serial stabber.
Little Rock serial stabber.
On April 11, 2021.
Dude, actually, there was from where I live at like this park or whatever, like national park. There was like in like the 80s or something. There was like two like people got murdered at like a national park. It was kind of crazy.
The Little Rock Police
I just found out about that like a couple weeks ago
from South
English.
Pulaski Street regarding a potential homicide. When they arrived at the scene,
they
found a middle-aged woman lying on the street with stab wounds all over her body.
Is that her?
This woman turned out to be 41-year-old Deborah Walker. She was homeless at the time and was living on the streets when this incident happened. She was quickly taken to the hospital where medical staff discovered that she had been stabbed at least 15 times. Despite lying on the street, bleeding for what may have been hours, she miraculously survived and managed to regain consciousness the same day.
How?
Investigators also visited her in the hospital to gather any information she could provide about her attacker. Unfortunately, she was attacked somewhere between 1 and 4 a.m. It was still dark outside, and all that she saw was that her attacker was a tall, African-American male with a slender build. Now, in most other similar cases, such limited information would hardly be enough to generate any leads.
Where was this at?
But in this instance, the description Deborah provided left the investigators in disbelief. That's because her attacker's profile closely matched the perpetrator of another incident that took place about 8 months earlier in the
I thought they were going to say
area.
the police officer.
The victim of that incident was 64-year-old Larry Eugene McChristian.
What?
He was living in Little Rock with his daughter Sarah, who was on probation at the time. On the 20th of August, 2020, he had a medical emergency and was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. He was discharged from the hospital the next morning.
Oh no, he's
However,
chilling.
when the hospital staff tried to contact Sarah so she could pick him up, she wasn't answering her phone.
Oh no.
So they gave Larry the information about a nearby homeless shelter and a bus token to get there.
Oh wait.
Later that day, Sarah came to the hospital looking for her father, only to learn that he'd been discharged hours ago. She then reached out to the homeless facility Larry was told about, but they didn't know anything about his whereabouts either. The only option she had was to file a missing persons report and wait for the police to find Larry. 2 days later, on the 24th of August, Sarah received the call she was waiting for. tragically, it wasn't the news she had hoped for.
No,
according to the
died.
official report, the Little Rock Police Department found Larry's body on South Gaines Street at around 2 a.m.
Wait, so who the fuck let him go?
Identified him by the hospital discharge papers he had on him. More importantly, he had multiple stab wounds on his body and was unfortunately already dead by the time the police arrived. His death was declared a homicide, and the investigators began looking for clues almost immediately.
Didn't he get released from inside of the hospital? So who let him go?
And there wasn't anything that could be used as evidence at the crime scene.
That's trying to be like clear evidence.
Inspecting the surrounding houses, they had a major breakthrough.
Oh my god, is that the dude?
The CCTV camera outside a nearby house had captured the suspect walking down the street when suddenly he spots Larry and begins walking towards him.
Oh no.
After committing the crime, he tries leaving the area only to stop, go back, and stab Larry one last time.
Oh my god, you sick fuck.
As mentioned earlier, this man matched the profile Deborah gave to the police, leading
this dude looks like a demon.
Investigators to believe she was attacked by the same person. While looking into older cases, they also connected the same killer to another murder that happened in the area on September 23rd, 2020.
Oh my gosh, wait,
the
where was
of this incident was 62-year-old Jeff Welch, another homeless
going after all these old people
man who was living in an abandoned home. On the morning of that day, Jeff's friend found him on the porch of his house with a stab wound on his neck. By this point, the investigators knew they were dealing with a deranged serial killer. However, just as they uncovered the connection between the three attacks...
How many, murders does the person commit to become a serial killer? Is that, because I think that's, 2. Would he be, considered a serial killer at that point? I don't know. Let me know in the comments.
Unfolded.
I'm not sure about that.
2023, a day after the...
Also, not gonna look that up because that's kind of sketchy.
Deborah Walker.
Imagine the FBI sees
was found on the Wright Avenue overpass. The only thing in common with these 4 attacks was that they all involved homeless individuals, and they all happened between 1 and 4 a.m.
Yeah, the serial killer does not like homeless old people at those hours.
There seemed to be no clear pattern on how the perpetrator selected his targets. This left the Little Rock community terrified to leave their homes, fearing they might become the next
victim. If you ain't homeless, I wouldn't be that scared. No offense.
After realizing the potential danger of this situation, LRPD began spreading awareness about the man who is now being referred to as the Little Rock Slasher. They also turned to the public to ask for any information they could provide on the matter, and even announced a Dude,
did y'all see that? There's a ladybug just crawling on my mic. That scared me.
$1,000 reward.
We also need your help. If you have seen anything suspicious or have surveillance cameras
on
your homes or businesses in this area,
yo, I hate ladybugs because when I was little, I was eating the pizza Pringles, and I was eating them. No, it was the pizza goldfish. I was eating them, and I guess there's a ladybug in there, and I ate the ladybug with the pizza goldfish. So now the smell of the ladybug just irritates me so much because I was so grossed out and I was traumatized from a young age. Little story time for y'all. That's why, dude, I'm also terrified of any beetle, ladybugs, and butterflies.
Unfortunately, despite having
and centipedes
TV footage of the suspect, the Little Rock Slasher was never caught.
What?
The case remains a mystery to this day. Or at least that's what the official reports say.
Wait, this was 2021? How's there not better footage?
Researching this case, I came across an Arkansas-based blog called the Snarky Media Report. The authors of this blog...
if it's 2021, bro, they gotta have 4K by then, right?
...did their own investigation into the Slasher case. And what they found was shocking to say the least.
When did this happen? Damn. This happened April 11th? That's almost been 4 years.
Put simply, they claim to have found the true identity of the killer after talking to multiple locals and Deborah.
They found him?
Who, according to their blog, already knew the identity of her attacker. They also uncovered many...
Why didn't they report anything before?
Details about this supposed killer, including his criminal record, which reveals that he has already served 2 prison terms in Arkansas for felony convictions of domestic violence. Also, his history with drug abuse and how it made him very agitated and violent. The authors of this blog also contacted the alleged killer's previous landlord, who gave them this image of the perpetrator. Which begs the question...
It's just
if they know so much about the slasher, including his legal name, why didn't they give this info to the police?
Exactly, that's what I was just saying.
The case goes from creepy to bizarre, since, according to them, they've already given everything they had to the relevant authorities. Despite this, the Little
Were the cops keeping pushing it away?
Didn't make any progression in catching the serial killer.
Oh my god!
Media
they covered
also
it up.
Published a video of the Little Rock mayor
they tried to cover it up.
Chief refusing to answer questions about the case. This seems to hint at something incredibly shady going on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
That said, there's no way for me to confirm if the authors of the snarky media blog are telling the truth. For all we know, their whole investigation is made up, and this is just some random guy who has nothing to do with the 4 attacks, and it's all...
Damn, imagine that is the normal, just a random guy, and then you're like on YouTube and you see, you're like, this is the suspect for the killer. And
all
like,
ploy to make the Little Rock Police Department look bad. Most of the information they've gathered seems to check out with what's released publicly by the authorities. The only discrepancy in their investigation is the age of the suspect. Officials believe the slasher to be young, possibly in his 20s, but the authors of this blog state that the person they found was 46 years old.
I almost paused, dude. The person in that photo did not look 20.
This is where the leads end. Whether snarky media is telling the truth or not remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that the case remains unsolved to this day.
I don't know, from that, I feel like he's in his 40s.
Is likely still out there and can continue his murder spree at any moment.
Dude, how many serial killers do we walk?
Thanks to Trade Coffee for sponsoring this shop. Subscription-based W Skip. How many serial killers do Smiley Face Killer? I've heard of this. Hold on. He spent the evening out drinking with his friends in the
But how many serial killers do you think we walked past, like,
during this
in our
time,
lifetime?
He likely drank more than he could handle, resulting in him throwing up in the bar's bathroom before leaving in a highly unstable and disoriented
in our whole lifetime?
Patrick was then seen turning left on 90th Street, heading in the direction
I think there's like a
of
thing, like a statistics about it.
This was the last time anyone would see Patrick alive. Following this night
imagine
out,
like in the
Patrick
80s and all that, like,
despite
all them serial killers, like,
efforts, authorities found no leads or clues
security
to
camera
whereabouts.
footage.
That
like,
is
that's
until
insane.
April 7, 1997,
That'd be so
when
scary.
Patrick's lifeless body was found in the
now,
East
if someone
River
did anything,
50
they'd be
days
caught.
after his disappearance.
Or I think
Duty
so.
Sergeant of the NYPD's Special Investigation Division, Kevin Gannon, was called to the scene to assist with the body's recovery and examination.
Oh gosh.
Kevin had been a seasoned detective for years, and by this point, there was little that could surprise him. However, the circumstances surrounding Patrick's death disturbed him to his core.
Oh,
the more he looked into it, the more strange the situation
What city
became.
is this?
For instance, Kevin noted that Patrick's body wasn't decomposed enough to have been floating in the river for a week, let alone the past 50 days.
It was recent.
He also found burn marks on Patrick's body, hinting at the possibility of him being restrained prior to his death. Kevin knew that
tortured him
something
and threw him in
wasn't
the
right.
lake.
Unfortunately, due to the complete lack of evidence pointing to
really
the contrary, Patrick's death was ruled as an accident.
And burn marks and he's in the lake.
Kept thinking over this feeling for the next year before coming across a case that reinforced his suspicions even further. On February 13, 1998, another body was found in the same stretch of water.
Dude, this isn't recent. I thought we were gonna do some recent
This body
stuff.
was later...
Isn't there... Oh, I wasn't on pause. There's a New England serial killer on the loose. I've been seeing TikToks all about it.
Celebrating an event with his friends in Times Square. After getting on the case, it didn't take long for Kevin to notice eerie similarities between the two cases, as both bodies were found within yards of each other. Both of them were also young Caucasian males and were on track to have successful careers. They both disappeared in one of the most crowded cities in the world without any trace as well. Most importantly, Kevin also found similar oddities in both cases, where the bodies were a lot less decomposed than they should have been, and there were burn marks indicating possible restraints before their death. Lawrence's case prompted Kevin to look for other similar cases across the U.S. He enlisted the help of fellow detective Anthony Duarte and a criminal justice professor, Dr. Lee Gilbertson.
Damn.
Together, they began investigating these cases, and soon a chilling pattern began to emerge. In total, they found 45 different instances of young men dying under shockingly similar circumstances as Patrick and Lawrence.
It's just an accident,
Most of them went out for a night of drinking, became more intoxicated than usual, disappeared shortly after, and were later found dead.
Oh my god, you think this just like
drugs
their drinks
Almost all of them were
does it
also
to them?
Caucasian and on track to have a high-paying career like engineering after college. Most disturbingly, however, they also found graffiti of smiley faces near the bodies.
Oh, the smiley face killer.
Victims. This led to the three investigators creating the smiley face murder theory.
That makes sense.
According to this theory, these 45 and possibly many other deaths from the 1990s to 2010s weren't accidents in the slightest.
Dude,
Instead, they were murders committed by
watching
a
this
single
video right now.
deranged
It's kind of
person
freaky.
or an organized group of serial killers. This is the only logical explanation they could find to justify the many oddities and similarities in these incidents. That said, while this theory makes complete sense to some people, others aren't convinced one bit. Criminal profiler Pat Brown, for instance, called this theory ludicrous. She believes that the idea of connecting smiley faces, one of the most common graffiti symbols, with murders is just absurd, stating,
But isn't it showing up at each crime scene? Like, what?
5 miles square, I bet you could find a smiley face. The FBI also completely denied this theory in a statement, reading, "The FBI has reviewed the information about the victims provided by 2 retired police detectives who have dubbed these incidents the smiley face murders and interviewed an individual who provided information to the detectives. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths or any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related."
I haven't thought about that, I'm not gonna lie.
However, despite these setbacks, the 3 men have stuck with their theory. They're still working on finding evidence to back their observations. That said, if their hunch is correct, it would mean one of the most wicked serial killers in American history is still at large today.
Could be. That's insane.
I-70 killer.
I-70 killer?
Robin Fuldauer was a 26-year-old Indiana University graduate who was working at an Indianapolis Payless shoe source store near I-70 in 1992. The 8th of April was supposed to be
I want
day
like
off.
2010.
However, just as she was getting ready to relax at home, the employee who was supposed to man the counter called in sick.
But also, we got a lot of new
Left with no
technology,
other
so it's probably
options, her
not
manager called Robin and told her to cover the shift instead.
common or possible.
Robin wasn't very happy about this emergency shift change, but she reluctantly agreed, arriving at the store at 10 a.m. and starting her shift as usual. Unfortunately, her day was about to get a whole lot worse. Everything seemed normal until 2 p.m. when the manager called the store for a routine check. To her surprise, Robin wasn't picking up the phone. She kept trying for a few minutes before giving up and calling the Speedway gas station neighboring the shoe store. One of the gas station employees, a friend of Robin's, went to the Payless store to see if she was doing okay. However, what she found inside left her confused. The store was in slight disarray, and some of the shoes were missing from the shelves. The cash register was also open, and there was no money in it. Most concerning of all, there were no signs of Robin anywhere. Her friend called out Robin's name, hoping she was just in the back and would respond. But when she didn't hear anything from Robin after minutes of standing in the store, she became worried and called the police at around 2:20 p.m. The cops arrived within minutes and began searching the store for clues on Robin's whereabouts. And it wasn't long before they made a devastating discovery. They found Robin lying in the store's back office, covered in blood. It was already too late. During questioning, an employee from the store across the street claimed to have seen a strange man loitering around the shoe store a couple hours earlier. According to this employee, the man sat on the curb for about a half hour, rifling through his bag and staring at the Payless store. They then saw the same man a few minutes later trying to hitch a ride back to Interstate 465, which was about a quarter mile from the store's location. Unfortunately, they were too far away to get a good look at the man's face. Given the money stolen from the register, and without any other leads, investigators filed this as nothing more than a robbery gone wrong. However, they couldn't have been more wrong. Because just 3 days later, something similarly tragic happened to 23-year-old Patricia Smith and 32-year-old Patricia Makers. The two were working at a bridal shop in Wichita along I-70. The incident happened a little past their usual closing time as they were waiting for a customer who had a pickup. When they saw a man approaching the store, they assumed that it was the customer. However, this man drew a gun on the two after entering the store, took them to the back, and executed both with shots to the back of their heads. As the killer was leaving the store, he crossed paths with the actual customer the girls were waiting for. Without hesitation, he aimed his gun at the man and ordered him to head to the back of the store. But the customer defied his command and ran, narrowly escaping with his life. He later helped the police draw a sketch of the killer. Unfortunately, the sketch didn't provide much of a breakthrough. By this point, the authorities were certain they were dealing with a serial killer, but despite their efforts, the killer's spree continued. By May 7th, he had taken 3 more victims in small, low-traffic stores along the I-70 highway. By the time investigators managed to compile a few more sketches, the I-70 killer stopped his quest and went into hiding. That is until 1993, when he claimed 3 more victims along I-35 in Texas. He tried to hide his identity by changing his weapon, but the investigators were quick to notice the similarities. One of his victims, Vicky Webb, also managed to miraculously survive after getting shot in the neck. If he were ever caught, Vicky's testimony would have been crucial in bringing him to justice. Though the I-70 killer was never found, and the case went cold for nearly 3 decades. However, then in 2021, investigators released CCTV footage of a murder that happened in 2001. The suspect in this footage looks strikingly similar to the I-70 killer sketches, potentially giving authorities the lead they need to finally catch him. It's likely only a matter of time before he runs out of places to hide and is captured. But for now, he's still out there, evading police and leaving the case unresolved. We can only hope he doesn't take any more victims.
That's insane. Hey, that's a pretty good video. If you guys want to go check it out, Chillin' Stairs, you probably already know who he is. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you in this one. Bye-bye.